Hey guys, got a video for you today on how to send mail from a web application running on the Google Cloud Platform. Now your first inclination might be to just use the mail function built in to PHP to send your email messages. This won't work, however, because Google Cloud blocks port 25 on their platform to prevent abuse of email messages and spamming. So what we need to do is look at an alternative approach. Google recommends using a third-party platform that does not run on port 25 to send and receive emails. So the first thing they recommend doing is signing up with an email service provider such as SendGrid, Mailgun, or Mailjet. For this demo, I chose Mailgun. I signed up for an account with them. I was not required to put in any kind of payment information, and it allows me, I believe, 10,000 emails per month before they start charging. So the first thing I did was I signed up, I verified my account with my email address and a phone number, and then I got an API key as well as a username and password. Now, once you've got an account set up, you need to come back into the Google Cloud Platform dashboard and set up a firewall rule that allows the outbound traffic to come out on port 2525, which is what Google recommends. So if we go over to the dashboard and choose underneath networking, VPC network, and firewall rules, it will take us to this web page. And I created a new firewall rule called allow outgoing TCP mail, and you can name that whatever you like. It's an egress rule that allows any IP address to receive messages on port 2525. Now I gave it a target of mail server, which is just a string of characters that I came up with. What I do is I take this same string of characters or this same tag and I go to my compute engine virtual machine, and under the virtual machine, I can add that in as one of the network tags. By tagging this instance with the same tag as the network rule, it applies that network rule to this machine. And you can verify that after you set it all up by clicking on the three dots here next to your server and view network details. And you will see that it shows allow outgoing TCP mail on port 2525. If it doesn't show up here, you haven't got your tags set up correctly. Now, once you've got the server configured where it can actually send messages to your third-party provider, now we need to figure out exactly how we're going to send those messages. Now, you could send it real time from the application. However, that would be a pretty poor design because you wouldn't want to interrupt the generation of a web page to stop and send a message to someone. And if for some reason you decided to send several messages out, that could significantly degrade the response time of your web server. So a better approach is actually to modify your events table to put in there some indicator that you would like this event to generate an email message. Now, the approach I've taken is to modify the structure of the events table that I showed in the previous video to add in a send mail flag, which is just a single integer, and a message, which is a text field. Whenever I set a particular event with a send mail value of 1, then I know that I need to send a message related to this event. And then the message itself is listed down here in the message field. So I could come in here and select star from events where send mail equals 1, and it would give me all the messages that have not been sent. And you'll see by default, it sets this value to 0. So by default, any message coming in here would not generate an email message. However, I could consciously create a new event that has a value of 1 for send mail, include a message that I want to send, and then whatever script I write to send messages would select those read those messages, and send them to the administrator. So let's take a look at what an implementation of that might look like. So here I have a Python script that I've written that will actually read the MySQL database looking for records that have a 1 in the send mail field, and then it will send a message and update that send mail field to a 0 to indicate that it's been sent. Now, there are several steps you have to take to prepare Python to send email messages and to connect to MySQL, and I have the links to those references down in the description of the video. But let's go over what the code looks like. To begin with, we import this requests library, which allows us to send requests to our mail provider to actually send the message. We also import a MySQL connector, which allows us to connect to the database and execute select statements and update statements. So once we've have these imported in, we have a function declared right here at the beginning that will get called each time we want to send an email. And it's just send simple message. And this is copied right out of the Mailgun documentation. I've modified it slightly so that the message can change each time, and it's passed in as a parameter to the function. So what this function does is simply post a request, and this may be familiar to you if you've used RESTful APIs, but it posts a request to the Mailgun website, passing in your domain name, which you'll have to set here and here, as well as your API key, which you'll have to set here. And in addition to that, you put in who it's from, who it's to, what the subject line would be, and in this case, the message is what's pulled from the database. And we'll see how that happens in a moment. So here's a simple send message function that I simply modified based on the documentation from Mailgun. Now scrolling down, you can see that I connect to the database, passing in my username and password for MySQL and whatever database contains my events table. After I connect to the database, I fetch all the records that are in the events table that have a send mail value of 1. That should be every event that needs to have an associated email sent, but the email has not yet been sent. So we fetch all of those, and then we loop through each of those records. We pull out the event ID, that way we can update the record later on, and we pull out the message, that way we can send an email message to the admins. Next, we send the actual message by calling the function that's declared up here at the top. And then we pass in the message that was specified in the events table. Lastly, I run an update statement to set the send mail flag to 0, indicating that the message has been sent, where the event ID is equal to the one that we just processed. And then we execute the statement and commit it and continue through the loop. So at a high level, if we were to select 10 messages where the send mail flag is equal to 1, then we would get 10 records back. We would loop through this 10 times and send those 10 messages, updating each of those events to a 0 for send mail so that they would not get sent again. Now, what is this script lacking? Well, it's lacking several things, one of which is good error handling. So in the event that something goes wrong, this is just a naive script that's going to keep right on going. It also lacks good security practices in terms of keeping our username and password outside of the script and using a prepared statement instead of just hard coding in our values into a SQL statement. But for demonstration purposes, this is quite adequate. So once you have this script created, you need to log in to your virtual machine. And here I have my mail.py script, where I've specified it on the server, and I need to schedule this to run regularly. So the easiest way to have a script run on a regular basis is to use a program called cron. The way to edit a cron job is to use the Crontab program with a -e flag saying I'd like to edit the Crontab job list. And when you press enter, it may ask you for what editor you'd like to run, Nano or VI or so on. Choose your editor and then come into here, and we're going to edit this file to add at the very end of it a new line. And you can read the documentation on how to define a crontab job in Linux. The easiest thing to do, in my opinion, is use a crontab generator online to help you generate this line in your crontab job list. So here's an example of a crontab generator that you can find online. This actually lets you choose how often you would like it to run. And in this case, let's say we wanted to run every minute of every hour of every day of every month of every weekday. Then we would just leave it at the default settings. It then asks you what command you'd like to execute. So for example, we would want to execute Python 3 followed by the name of our script. And in this case, mine is in home rthaxton mail.py. And this would execute our mail script using the Python 3 executable. Now, we might want to save output from the file to some location, so we can check that off. And we can specify where we would like to write our output to. In this case, I'll just put it in the same location, home rthaxton mail.log. Now, every time this script executes, it will write its output to this file. We click Generate Crontab line, and it shows you what the line should go into the Crontab job file. So we'll copy that. We'll come over and paste it in here. Now I'm going to make one little change, which is to add another greater than sign here. Two greater than signs means it's going to append to that file. If we didn't have both of them, if we only had one greater than sign, it would keep overwriting the file every time. So once we're done, we exit, and it says installing new crontab, and now once a minute, this crontab job is going to run. So here, I've made note that an HTML injection attack was attempted, and it specified a new event with a send mail value of 1 and a message, OMG, a hack. So what we should see is in a few minutes, a message should show up in our inbox telling us that a hack may have occurred, and at the same time, this send mail flag will become 0 because the email has been successfully sent. So we'll come back in just a moment and see what it looks like. Okay, we're back. You can see that now the send mail flag is now set to 1, and trust me, an email did show up in my inbox. Okay, so this is a very quick basic video on how you might send messages from a web application on the Google Cloud Platform.